Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of ESSR Central. Special because we are live. Yes, of course, it is WrestleMania week, one of the biggest weeks in the wrestling calendar. We thought we'd make our weekly news show even better by going out live here on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page. I have, of course, Stephen Wilson, the host of this particular week's ESSR Central, and I can't wait to go through the latest week's news and what is my favourite week of the year as we count down towards WrestleMania. But before we get started, just going to do a bit of housekeeping. Of course, this is going out live on Facebook and YouTube, but you can also get this, as you normally do, on our podcast platforms this Thursday as well. So tomorrow, for those watching live, you can all good podcast platforms if you've never caught us before. Spotify, Android podcasts, we are on them all. You're watching this obviously potentially on Facebook, but we are also on Twitter and Instagram at Suplex Retweet as well. You may also be watching it on YouTube. We've got loads of content on there all the time, including the Conspiracy Theory and the Book It tournament, the final of which was this past Sunday. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody else did. But I have got two guests with me today to go through the last week of news. They are polar opposites in the wrestling world. One's a WWE mark, the other's a New Japan mark. One's into football, the other's into rugby. One's a big fan of Panic at the Disco, the other one likes to groove to Taylor Swift. And you can find one at the bottom of the ESSR fantasy draft table, and the other one is at the top. Yes, it's Ross McLeod and Grant McRobbie. Gents, how are we?
Listen. See when Shinsuke Nakamura wins the Andre Battle Royal by eliminating all 21 competitors, and then Finn Balor beats Karrion Kross, and then Sonya Deville abuses her power and has Bayley as her tag partner, and then we get all the Damian Priest matches and segments out the way. You're going to be surprised when we shoot right up on that table to fourth.
That's really wishful thinking there, Ross.
It really is. It's been an absolute... honestly, had we been a football team, the manager would have left in April. That's how bad we've been this season.
I can't talk. I've not been much better. I'm like 10 points above you. It's been an absolute horror. I blame that on your brother, though. I mean, Kushida. I love Kushida, but my God.
Well, Kushida might get a win tonight, you know.
He may do.
There may be a live stream later on that covers that, you know, maybe a wee NXT live stream covering all this weekend's action, you know. Weekend. I'm so used to saying weekend. WrestleMania's get that big, it's a week now. That's why we have to do a special live episode of Central.
I know, it's mental. You know, 2 nights of TakeOver, 2 nights of WrestleMania. You know, the Hall of Fame was last night. I'm not going to talk about the Hall of Fame because we could be there all night. But if you are watching this live on any of the two platforms, please comment and give your opinions. You know, if you want to ask any questions about the stuff we're talking about. Ross, your partner's not very happy. Jack Graham there. Such blasphemy.
Exactly. And listen, when Bad Bunny and Damian Priest pick up the win in the most important match of this WrestleMania week against Miz and Morrison, hey, hey, hop, hop, you will not be laughing then.
Anyway.
Hey, hop, hop, pish.
Anyway, let's get into the last week's news. WrestleMania week really started with a bang last Friday, guys, because we got the announcement. It was the latest guest on the Stone Cold Broken Skull sessions on the WWE Network. Now, anybody who's paid attention to Stone Cold's show on the network over the last year, he's really brought it. He's got a lot of major guests over that particular time, but most of them predominantly have came from the current WWE roster. Recent examples are Drew McIntyre, Bayley, Sasha Banks, and most recently Randy Orton. But the world was really shook, the wrestling world anyway, was really shook on Friday when the latest guest for the Stone Cold Broken Skull session was announced as WWE legend and AEW star Chris Jericho was going to be the latest.
Winnipeg's favourite Trump supporter. Here we go.
He was announced.
Build that wall and then break those walls down.
Yeah. The absolute craziness of Jericho on the WWE Network, AEW's first champion, and a very vocal man in the last couple of years against WWE with his podcast. Not only is he going to be appearing on Stone Cold's podcast, he's going to be on the podcast this coming Sunday on WrestleMania on Sunday. AEW's biggest star appearing on WWE's network on their biggest night of the year. Ross, what the hell is going on?
I don't know. I think CM Punk summed it up pretty well. He was asked by TMZ, who just so happened to know where he was at that time, about what he thought Vince McMahon would think of it. And is Vince McMahon scared of AEW? And CM Punk said, well, no, because if he was scared of AEW, he wouldn't bring on Chris Jericho, who would mention AEW and then get eyes on AEW's product. The fact that it's been allowed to happen shows Vince McMahon doesn't see him as a threat. And, you know, the whole Wednesday Night Wars thing, which really only counts if you live in America, because they only go direct to head on TV in America. Here, obviously, it's a different story. But, yeah, I thought it was weird. You know, you need a big guest on WrestleMania weekend, and you don't get much bigger than Chris Jericho while he's in another company, and he was their first ever champion, you know what I mean? Like, a guy who's been so vocal, he's not shied away from having the likes of, you know, Big Show when he left WWE, Brody Lee when he originally left WWE and signed with AEW before his passing. They had, obviously, him on, and they had Hawkins and Ryder on when they were released at the beginning of the pandemic. So he's not shied away from having people on who have had less than complimentary things to say about WWE recently. So I think it's such a shock, not the fact that he's in AEW, but the fact that he is such an anti-WWE guy at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last couple of months, we've seen so many examples of this forbidden door being blasted open. You know, we've seen the likes of AEW, Impact, New Japan Pro Wrestling all interacting in such way. But if there was one company you would not put in this bracket of doing anything with this so-called forbidden door, WWE would have been that company, which I think has made this even more shocking.
I know, it's absolutely it felt like it was an April Fool's joke played like a day late. How Jericho's going to cope like doing a kind of podcast style show without being able to promote Omaha Steaks, I do not know. You know, it's good. Like, is he going to get confused? I think I'm really looking forward to it, as long as they let them talk about whatever they want. And it's not just a case of, no, Chris, we can't talk about the present. We're not going on about that. You can only talk about the past.
Well, apparently, Stone Cold came out on the same day because, you know, everybody was buzzing to find out more about it. And Stone Cold did say, Ross, that they go into everything, including AEW, which is crazy. But you kind of think about it, that there seems to be a bit of a leeway to it. I mean, the Randy Orton Broken Skull Sessions was recorded before Christian's departure. And obviously, the mentions of Christian remained throughout the whole podcast. So I think it's partly as well the sway of Stone Cold and the company.
Yeah, I think like we saw with Triple H running NXT, people being mentioned as former world champions, you know, when they come into the company, likes of Samoa Joe and Roderick Strong and what have you, because they won titles in TNA and Ring of Honor. And I think WWE have stopped that attitude of, well, you're nobody until you come to WWE. I think highlighting past experiences has been good for NXT because it's built stars and it's worked for WWE. So to see AEW mentioned, I don't think is as much of a shock as it would have been, say, 2014 when the network first launched, because that was like a big, whenever someone mentioned TNA, it was like, oh my God, they mentioned TNA. Like, you can't mention TNA. It was if people left WWE to go to TNA, it was like Rob Van Dam left and then he went to sleep for a while. And then he woke up and came back to WWE. Was he not in TNA? No, he was in his bed. He was having a long hibernation. He went nowhere else. He won no one else's world title. He went nowhere. But no, it certainly is weird considering the back and forth. It's been more of an AEW taking shots at WWE, more directly, I would say. Whereas WWE will maybe have a throwaway comment every now and then. But yeah, to see, especially at this early stage of AEW's existence, to see their first ever champion on the network is a bit of a shock.
Mm-hmm. Grant, there was also, over the last couple of days as well, the pre-takeover Triple H press conference with the media, and he was asked, I believe it was by Gary Cassidy of Inside the Ropes, what do you make of this one? And Triple H was he said he doesn't think it correlates, Jericho being in the podcast to having a relationship with these companies, but he also said that he's not surprised that Jericho is going to be on the podcast, and he reiterated something he said months before, that WWE is open for business. Is that a realistic prospect in the coming months? Could we see, Kenny Omega showing up to slag off Seth Rollins' drip?
I don't see it happening. I don't see the Forbidden Door becoming the Forbidden Bloody Planet at this rate. There's just WWE has just got such a large roster across the three brands as it is. So how would you even start to squeeze these guys in from other areas? And then egos at the top, they can all give each other the whole ego stroke of we're open for business. But don't get me wrong, it's happened in the past. We had Liger come over for that one match with Tyler Breeze, but that was back in a different time when New Japan was still on the up and coming again compared to where they are now. Would I love to see Omega come in and absolutely V-trigger someone's head off? Oh, absolutely. But it's not going to happen. Or the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, that would be a controversial one.
Yeah, that is something. Quick, before we actually mention said IWGP World Champion, we have a comment from Scott McLeod having a go at me, saying it was me at What is Charlotte Flair, where we could have Omega. Excuse me.
That is a massive listen, you little
airing the dirty laundry in public, so unprofessional from one of the lower draft teams.
Absolute amateur hour. Jack was on to defend me, and I'm sure if Gary wasn't working, he'd be on to defend Grant had anything been said on
Why didn't he defend Grant? They're top of the league. There's nothing to defend.
Because a good partner backs his teammate no matter where they're standing, and you clearly don't have this bond with Scott. But as Grant said, it reminded me of the comments Dean Ambrose made a couple of weeks ago. Everyone was trying to be polite, and Cody Rhodes had his VP hat on, and Triple H, he's a COO in a major company. He can't turn around and go, work with him. Are you mad? No.
Fuck off.
But those amateurs, no, have fun with being the elite. No, obviously he's not going to say that. They are going to stroke each other's ego, whereas Dean Ambrose, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, who could leave AEW tomorrow and still go anywhere in the world he wanted, he came out and went, no, WWE and AEW aren't going to work together. It's not going to happen. Accept it and move on. Because
who does Dean Ambrose you speak of? Who is Dean Ambrose?
Well, he's a guy called Jonathan Good. I believe he's Maxley, or Maxley is.
His wife's a very prominent podcaster these days.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, he came out and said, no, it's not going to happen. I think conversations could happen so that when things come up, such as maybe Christian going into the Hall of Fame, or if they're doing something for Edge on the network, Christian can do new footage for them. Or if there's a documentary, if AEW do a documentary on someone, people can be interviewed from WWE. I don't think you're going to start seeing, people going back and forward, because there's too much hurt. There's people who have, left WWE and don't want to deal with them anymore. I don't think people would be happy that they would then have to deal with not only AEW, but then WWE. People left WWE for a reason. and there might be people who maybe turned down an AEW contract because they didn't like what they had to say. You know what I mean? So I think we might see some things going back and forward. We might see some interviews and new footage filmed with people who are currently on the AEW roster for the network. I don't see many matches happening.
Wait, let me throw it out there. Dream match. 1 Marco stunt against Braun Strowman.
I would love to see Braun throw him about by his giant head.
Like he would launch him. Yeet.
I'm going to actually move over then now to Japan, and big news coming out of Japan over the weekend. They had their latest pay-per-view, Sakura Genesis. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I'm terrible with that. But big title match went on at that particular show. It was Kota Ibushi defending the title against the New Japan Cup winner Will Ospreay. And we got a new champion on that particular show. Kota Ibushi's reign as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, very, very short, indeed only a couple of months. And Will Ospreay's become...
confirmed.
No. Technically, his actual World Heavyweight Championship reign never even started because it's a different title, different name for it now.
Well, his title reign...
It's a Sevco title. It's a Sevco title. Pay your taxes, Sevco.
Either way, he lost to Ospreay, and Ospreay is the first Brit to hold the big belt in New Japan. Grant, I'll start off with you first. From the in-ring side of things, these two put on a bit of a banger, as they have done many times they've met in the past.
Aye, and that's it. Like, separate the people. Like, doesn't matter what you personally. If you look at it objectively as an in-ring match, it is absolutely phenomenal. Especially some of the bit, like the end in 5-10 minutes is just unreal. And I know people probably see me saying this and they'll be like, unfollow, he's supporting Ospreay, gone. But I stand by it. In ring, I love the match. I couldn't help but love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a sheer fire. I mean, New Japan have got a habit of putting on, top class matches. But Ross, you're obviously the non-New Japan watching of the two guests here. So I will ask you about the flip side of things. Will Ospreay over the last year has become a bit of a controversial figure in the wake of the speaking out movement. So that is what has got a lot of people's nerves here, especially from this side of the world in the UK. Many people see this as an example of New Japan not being in touch with all the issues that have went on by crowning Ospreay as their champion.
Yeah, I think obviously what Grant said there, when you watch a match like bell to bell, it doesn't mean you're supporting someone if you say the match bell to bell was a good match, you know what I mean? Like, there's clearly a cultural thing over in Japan where this doesn't seem seen as such a big deal. We saw in the past that people have still been able to make a living and go over there. Michael Elgin is a subject of debate in the United States, but he's been a figure in New Japan for quite a while. This isn't a dig at New Japan, by the way. This is just it's the culture of the country that they are in. Yeah. Obviously, the thing to say is obviously because we are live and we are liable. Allegations were made against someone in Ospreay's life. Ospreay defended them, and then there's been allegations of Will Ospreay and Bea Priestley's behaviour afterwards towards the person who came out and spoke about something. Just to clear ourselves up for liable here.
Statements were made. Other statements were retracted.
Yeah, statements were made.
Everything is pure.
Yeah, Ospreay has never shied away from saying some controversial things. I think that's what happens when you're when you get everything so young and you're so good so young, you kind of lose touch with the real world, and you can do and act a bit like a knobhead. I don't think that's liable. I think that's factually correct. People tend to do that. Ospreay's a fun, pass it on, says someone who's not related to me for the lawsuit. But yeah, I think it reeks of, it's a tone-deaf move. WWE have got some criticism for putting their US title on Riddle, there's been some allegations and comments made about Riddle. People said that was a tone-deaf move. There's been the rumours that Jordan Devlin's been brought over to NXT to lose the title, and then that'll, because some allegations made about him. But yeah, it just seems like speaking out was a big thing in the summer, and then as it's died down, people have started to get work again, or people have started to come out of the woodwork, and unfortunately, this is going to be one that overshadows what was a great match, the aftermath and the conversation that will come with Will Ospreay being champion will open a can of worms and have a very uncomfortable conversation that could hopefully leads to more people coming forward if they've ever suffered abuse or have something to speak out about. Just try to watch what I'm saying here, you know what I mean? Because we all obviously do support.
It's a hard conversation.
Support people coming out and speaking about their experiences, and if something's happened, please step forward and hold people accountable and don't drop that ball you're throwing about, Stephen. But yeah, I think the conversation that comes with Will Ospreay as New Japan champion is an ugly conversation that will open a can of worms into maybe attitudes over in that part of the world.
Yeah, because the thing about it, Grant, is clear the New Japan kind of where they want to go with it, because there was a big talk that there was a big push for Ospreay last summer, but the pandemic obviously prevented Ospreay from being there, so his push apparently went to Evo, and if you kind of look at the similarities now, Evo won the New Japan Cup, won the title, Ospreay's done the same thing, so it's kind of like even despite this one, the head up in New Japan still have the big plans for him, especially since obviously there's been a lot of changes in the hierarchy in New Japan the last year as well, but it's the same bookers at the end of the day.
There's been a lot of controversy around it, and I think people shouldn't be disheartened in regards to the fact that, you know, do speak up about these things and that, but at the same time, you know, there is like things like WWE, New Japan. It's like any big corporation. It feels like they're almost invincible to an extent. You know, everyone can say they're going to cancel subscriptions and stuff like that. By all means, you do what your moral compass tells you to do. By all means, make people aware of these issues, bring it up. But there needs to be a good discourse about it, and not what you sometimes see on Twitter, where the mudslinging begins and insults get thrown just because people disagree in that, and that's where it starts to get messy. And you know, at the end, it just hurts the fans. It is sort of. I mean, for me, for what's happened, I'll be honest in regards to, I am still going to watch New Japan. I am still subscribed. I do have reservations about, even if I take away Ospreay as a person, just the booking decision of having Ibushi lose that belt when he's named the first champion on it on the first defense. I don't quite agree with the booking decision, but it's Gedo. No doubt he's got some sort of plan in the long term, as much as people are disagreeing with the short term booking.
Mm-hmm. There is talk of the last couple of days as well. Meltzer came out and said that apparently Ibushi's got a bit of a foot injury, which is maybe why they took the belt off him when they did. But even then, the New Japan Cup plans will be probably long-seeded anyway, so it's probably been a bit of a long-term plan. Ross, quickly before we move away from this topic, there's been some tweets I've seen going back to a tweet a certain former WWE champion sent out a couple of years ago, that WWE champion being Seth Rollins, who infamously a couple of years ago had a go at Will Ospreay on Twitter, said, "We have a guy in WWE who can do everything that you do, who's just won the US title in the form of Ricochet." So fast forward 2 years, Will Ospreay's IWGP champion, and Ricochet is hanging about with Alberto Carrillo, Drew Gulak, and everybody else in a random locker room, doing absolutely hee-haw.
Something David Campbell said on the conspiracy theory about when we mentioned Ricochet was named, I believe it was most underrated. He said, well, hold on a minute, we just watched Carmella and Bayley, whereas Somalia just did everything that Ricochet could do, the flips and all that. You know, so I don't deny Ospreay's an incredible wrestler. Ricochet's a very underutilized wrestler. I just think the whole thing is a bit. No one should stop watching New Japan. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, Grant's right. You'll still watch New Japan, but you know, Ospreay is champ. It's questionable, and what's also questionable is, and we'll probably touch on it later, B. Priestley might be going to WWE. So then that just drags both companies into this moral quagmire that's like, oh, for sake.
Yes, Brie Priestley apparently going to NXT UK. That's something I didn't expect to hear anytime soon. But Grant, quickly before we move away from this one, again going back to the in-ring side of thing, definitely one you would recommend if you took away all the other aspects of it.
I wholeheartedly the match itself. It didn't get me to. There is some bits in it which kind of feels like New Japan is guilty of doing in any 30+ minute main event where they feel that there is a throwback to a previous thing, but there is a logic part where like the reverse Rana off the top rope that Ibushi tries, Ospreay lands on his feet again. Ibushi, you've done it 6 times to him before. He's landed on his feet every time. Didn't be surprised he'd done it the 7th. This is why I prefer Zack Sabre Jr. because he actually does the whole logic thing. It's like, if you try and flip on me, I will move. I'm not going to stand and catch you. But yeah, banging match beginning and especially some of the knees near the end. I was like, are they actually going for real here? Is there some heat?
Well, they've never been shy of giving each other a good few thumps in their matches. You know, the match at Wrestle Kingdom a couple of years ago, for example, that elbow to the back of the head. Oh man, that was nasty. Now we're going to move away. We're going to go back to WWE side of things, and obviously WrestleMania is coming up. We're not going to go too much into the WrestleMania card itself. We have a live stream coming out over the weekend, which will go into that in a bit more detail. But one thing that's been announced over the last week is there's going to be a special edition of this week, SmackDown, which they're dubbing WrestleMania SmackDown. I think it was something like that. I can't remember. But either way, there are 2 matches going to be on SmackDown, which many people think would probably have been on the Mania card, probably on the pre-show. One of which is the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. That's been moved on to SmackDown. 22 wrestlers will be taking part in that particular one. Pretty much anybody who's not booked on the WrestleMania card from the male side of things, or not in the other match that I'm going to mention, is in that Battle Royal. That other particular match I'm mentioning is a 4-way match for the Tag Team Championships. It's been a feud that's built up over the last few weeks on SmackDown, and it's going to be the Dirty Dogs, Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode, defending their tag titles against the Street Profits, Alpha Academy of Chad Gable and Otis, and the Mysterios. So again, 2 matches that may have made it on the WrestleMania card, Grant, but obviously these probably would have been pre-show matches, and the rumours that we are hearing is that WWE want to make the first match of Saturday a big deal, given that it's the first live show with crowds in over a year for WWE, and I don't think they want to have their big reactions for the cannon fodder in the Battle Royal. It's fair to say.
Aye, I can see their point with that, and I'll be honest. I think it was Ross mentioned it in the group chat about them apparently wanting to limit the size, like the length of each card on the Saturday and the Sunday. Because I don't know about yous, but WWE's this is the difference between me with New Japan and WWE. New Japan put on like a 5.5 hour Wrestle Kingdom. There's no promos, there's no talking, it's just matches. So I feel that it flows better. But WWE's guilty of let's have a 10-minute hype video before every single match. It's like, I know the story, I've been watching it, I paid attention enough. I don't need what is essentially 2 hours worth of hype to make it like a 7-hour card. So bringing the length down, putting these matches on SmackDown, and kind of giving us that whole Christmas Eve feel. That's what it feels like. It's like, you want WrestleMania? Well, but guess what? We've got some WrestleMania to put in your WrestleMania, to put in your SmackDown. Get down with that.
It's a fair one, Ross, because if you look at it, say, the big criticism with the last couple of WrestleManias last year excluded is far too long, and it sometimes feels that WWE just tries to appease every wrestler by getting them on the card. But you look back 20 odd years ago, not every wrestler took part in the card. You know, you had to earn your spot in WrestleMania. I mean, granted, the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, you kind of feel, yeah, that should be shoved off the card. You maybe feel sorry for the 4 teams in the tag title season because they've at least tried to build something over the last few weeks, but getting this shot on SmackDown might actually be better for them because they might get a bit more time to shine.
Yeah, just pick up quickly on something Grant said about there's no promo packages for New Japan. New Japan and Wrestle Kingdom and WrestleMania kind of reminds me of DC and Marvel. DC, if you pick up a comic book of Batman, it's like you better have read the past 6 issues of this special and you better know everything about Batman. Whereas you pick up a Marvel comic and it's a bit more bright and friendly, and like it tells you like last time in the amazing issues of
Restore the Snyderverse.
Yeah. And So when you move, obviously WrestleMania, something I said about that was I think now that SmackDown's on a Friday again, and now they don't do this whole thing where they just kind of. You mind years ago it used to be footage from Fan Access and 2 recorded matches that were recorded before Raw. That was the SmackDown before Mania. Now I think now that it's on Fox and it's this $1 billion deal, it's sort of you get the Raw after Mania. So they're going to try to like the SmackDown before Mania and make it like a 4-day event, which I think is quite cool. And you talk about the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. For years they did a Battle Royal but never showed it on TV. I think it's fine to do a Battle Royal. I think it's fine. Usually if we have it on the pre-show, again, that's fine, all the SmackDown before. But you're right, not everyone made it onto the WrestleMania card in years gone by. And I think people like that idea of earning your spot in WrestleMania and there not being filler, but then they're very quick to complain if someone doesn't make the card. You know what I mean? Like, not everyone can make the card of WrestleMania. Not everyone should make the card of WrestleMania. That's just like T-Bar and Kalisto and, Tucker. That's not a WrestleMania worthy contender. You know what I mean? Like, they're in the Battle Royal for a reason. And yeah, there's exceptions like Nakamura, who will probably win the Battle Royal or finish runner-up to whoever does win the Battle Royal, who should be on WrestleMania. But, you don't moan too much about those other guys not being on it. So you can't put one match on the show to just get this one person on the show. You know what I mean? Like, as you said, you should earn your spot. And also, well, you and I watched WrestleMania 34 in Gary's, and I didn't get in at 7 o'clock, and I only used to stay like 15 minutes down the road from Gary, and I was getting in at 7 o'clock in the morning after WrestleMania. That's far too long. Like, I love WrestleMania, but 7-8 hours is far too long.
Yeah, it's going to be the 2 ones are going to be 3.5 hours apparently both nights, which is it feels a bit nice. I mean, I've seen a thing that's worried me that it might be starting at 1, which I'm not. If it starts at 1, that gives me a bit of fear. If it starts at midnight, fair enough. But Takeover tonight's starting at 1 a.m. But that's based on the TV deal as well. It needs to start at that time because that's when it starts every other time. One people who are benefited though from getting on the card apparently is the WWE Women's Division, because on night 1 of WrestleMania there's now going to be a tag team turmoil match between pretty much every tag team on the women's side of WWE. Potentially more people in it now, because the teams that have been announced so far is Lana and Naomi. We've got the Riot Squad. We've got Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose. And we've got everybody's favourite team of Natalya and Tamina. Now, one thing apparently it's came out in the last couple of days as well. WrestleVotes put this out on Twitter. WrestleVotes very reputable for the stuff they put out. That apparently WWE were going to go with the idea of having what they did, I think, at WrestleMania 14, 15. I can't remember exactly the year, but they had a battle royal on the pre-show, and the 2 winners of the battle royal essentially were the ones who would go on to challenge for the tag titles. And that year it was D'Lo Brown and Test. What's your thoughts on that idea? Would that have been something that kind of make things a bit more interesting to you, to have all these unused women fighting for something?
I think, as long as it wasn't presented like a kind of token, here you go, you're getting on the card just to kind of pad out the numbers, then I like the idea of it, and tag team turmoil match. I mean, if they want to keep an adding tease to what's going to be tag team turmoil tornado tables match, like they really give them like some daft names, but these kind of big matches do work. Like the one that AEW had not too long ago with all the tag teams. What was that? They're like tag team battle royale sort of thing that ended up with a Death Triangle winning. Mm-hmm. I think this women's one, I mean, people can take the piss with like things like Tamina and Natalya. Natalya can wrestle. Yeah, she maybe her character's kind of lost a lot of its charm in that over time, but she is a solid in-ring worker. And anyone says that she's not deserving of a spot there, it's like, sorry, but look at her history. She has done a lot for the women's division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tamina, on the other hand, we can slag Tamina all we want because she's just lad as fucking the day is old. I do get your point on Natalya. Natalya is a very good wrestler. I think she's sometimes her character work has lets her down a wee bit, which makes her lost in the shuffle a wee bit. But Ross, the interesting thing I think about this match still is we've got these 4 teams, but we've also still got a few wrestlers in the women's division who don't seem to be anywhere near this match or any other match. You know, the biggest example on the SmackDown side of things, especially, is Bayley. I mean, Bayley's had an absolute stellar year, and she's nowhere to be seen. They have teased points in the last week or so. Billie Kay's doing a lot of stuff. She's teased some stuff with Carmella. She's not teased anything with Peyton Royce, which seems like a no-brainer, you know. And then you could have Bayley and Carmella, but there's a potential chance, I think, that they may throw another couple of teams in this match.
Yeah, I've said I think there might be a wee thing with Sonya Deville. She sort of came back to TV. Her whole thing was stopping the Street Profits getting a rematch for no apparent reason. Like we said, we weren't doing automatic rematches anymore. That's all that had to be said to that. Move swiftly on. I'm in charge. You're not. But yeah, Sonya Deville's character came, then just sort of went. And with Bayley not being on the card, as you mentioned, I have a weird feeling that Sonya is going to show up with a mystery partner, and I think it may be Bayley. I think that they have said tag team turmoil. That's the thing. It's not a fatal 4-way as of yet. So, you know, things could change in that aspect. But whether it was a battle royal or whether it was a turmoil, it's sort of a throwaway thing. You know what I mean? It's again with the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, we have a lot of people that are deserving of a WrestleMania match in this match. We also have some people who are maybe not WrestleMania worthy in this match, you know what I mean? So the Iconics not being in it, that's a bit crap. Billie Kay and Carmella, you know, that could be fun. And I think obviously Scott was the one that brought up, it was WrestleMania 15, I believe, the Battle Royal took place. Could you imagine the last 2 people in the ring being Billie Kay and Peyton Royce? And like just over the weeks, Billie Kay starting to melt the cold heart that is Peyton Royce has become, starting to get back to that stage where Peyton Royce can truly be iconic. Would that not have just been absolutely superb? You know what I mean? Or like some odd couple tag team. Billie Kay and anyone is money for me. You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine Bayley winning the Battle Royal, but like Billie Kay get knocked on her ass the first, 2 minutes, so she went under the ropes. So her and Bayley are the winners. Could you imagine those interactions with Grumpy Karen and the light of her life that is Billie Kay? Honestly, Billie Kay should be in this match, all right? That's what I'm taking for this. Billie Kay should be in this match.
Billie Kay was at least on Raw when they kind of teased the match, where all the teams were there and Billie Kay was just floating about, doing what she was doing. There's some great gifs going about of gifs and memes, of Billie Kay. The Billie Kay thing with Tony Storm at the Rumble, and it's one of those Daniel Bryan things. It's like Daniel Bryan triple threat match. You have to see it. The other big rumor I've kind of seen is Bayley Charlotte could win this battle royal. Oh, this tag team turmoil. Sorry, imagine that.
Nah, that's like a Rock and Undertaker winning the titles in the Attitude Era, isn't it? It lasts for about a week and then they go on to feud with each other. Like it's not for me. I wouldn't mind if Bayley and Charlotte showed up. I wouldn't mind Baymella. They've got a history in NXT.
Baymella's a good one. I like the idea of Baymella.
Charlotte showing up with a random tag. Charlotte showing up with Andrea, which is just Andrade in a wig. Determined to get his job back and get onto the WrestleMania card. The Iconics being there, I think that could be amazing. But it is sort of a throwaway match, and I don't see whoever wins beating Nia and Shayna. I think Nia and Shayna are starting to get a bit more momentum again, especially with Reginald next to them. I think they're leaving it with the tag titles this weekend.
Well, we will hear more about the whole build to WrestleMania on that pre-show, the 2 pre-shows over the weekend that we're doing live on our Facebook and YouTube channels.
Is that a Royal Me, Wilson? Is that a Royal Me?
Yes. We have comments here. Alan Laurie says that Iconics reunion will be bigger than Savage and Miss Elizabeth. What a
And I'll
fucking
be the
statement!
I will be the wee specky guy in the crowd greeting like that.
What a statement that is! You know, never did I ever think I would hear that. But then again, I was on an episode of Central where I compared Nia and Shayna to Kane and Daniel Bryan. So there we go.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know.
We've lost control. This is a train wreck.
We also have another comment from Michael Cloughier. I think I pronounced his name right. He's not a big fan of Nia Jax.
Nia's cancelled. What's Nia done?
He's also said, "Can we have a drink of whatever Alan's on?"
I agree with Alan. You cheeky dick.
Oh, jeez. Moving back, Ross, to Raw side of things, and the last couple of weeks has seen the breakup of another stable on Raw. Now, I'm not talking about Retribution, because who remembers them now? No, we're talking about the Hurt Business. They broke up a couple of weeks ago on Raw with Lashley and MVP taking out their frustrations on Cedric and Shelton. But there was frustrations as well backstage from the four of these wrestlers, because they were not particularly happy with the decision from Vince to split them up. And can you blame them? They were the best stable going about on WWE television.
Yeah, the stable itself was really good. I felt really sorry for them. I didn't like the fact that New Day were just kind of out of nowhere tag champs, and then AJ and Omos went, oh, by the way, we were going to face you at WrestleMania, and then there was a pay-per-view in between, and the Hurt Business got no such, offer or sort of tag team rematch or an ability to get back into the title hunt. You know what I mean? I felt it just kind of did the group more damage than good. Bobby Lashley's been on an absolute tear since winning the US title. He's torn through Retribution, torn through Apollo, Sami Zayn. He was torn through Sheamus, battered Drew McIntyre, ragdolled The Miz. He's been absolutely sensational. And I think maybe they thought, oh, we're booking these guys so strong, but we're not booking these guys strong, and we can't have weakness around a WrestleMania main event. Also, the fact that Drew is sort of a loner. He wouldn't have had anyone to back him up at WrestleMania. But all I say to that is, Stone Cold went into the WrestleMania main event against The Rock and the Corporation, and the fans loved it and the fans believed it. So I really don't see any reason to break them up, especially when the guys are happy together. You could write them off TV. You could go, look, we're going to have Drew beat you in that handicap match, and Bobby can be upset about it and put out like the bounty on Drew's head. But you could also had, people that had been maybe taken out by the Hurt Business come back and defend Drew at WrestleMania. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to get around this and still keep the WrestleMania main event and still keep the Hurt Business together. I just think when WWE breaks up stables, they very rarely have a plan for them. It is either they break up and then they go into obscurity, heavy machinery. They break up and then they go to other random tag teams, the Iconics, heavy machinery again. Or one of them ragdolls the other one, and one goes on to success and one is just kind of thrown by the wayside. You know what I mean? That's so for them not to have a plan and then for them to do it against the wishes of people in the stable, I think it's a bit crap. You know what I mean? Because you could have still had something to do for three of the people that are hanging about backstage not doing anything. Well, you could have had them maybe standing up to the Hurt Business. You know what I mean? We're supporting Drew. You put this bounty on Drew's head. We're not going to, take your money because we don't work for you. You could have worked something like that into the angle. I just feel that there's so many ways WWE could have kept this. And when four people are working on something and maybe they say to you, look, we don't think this is the right time, maybe listen to them because they're the ones that are going to have to go out there and pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, what you mentioned about Drew, it doesn't help that he goes into a locker room and beats up everybody that's in there. He's not going to have any pals doing that. But Grant, Ross made a great point in terms of the stable stuff. You obviously big fan of New Japan, and the stable thing is a big part of that company. But AEW as well. I mean, AEW's got about 20 million stables going on there as well. So it just shows that Vince's idea of how to book groups just is not in tune with any other wrestling company in the world.
I think it's shown in the last few years, like Vince just does not like tag team wrestling. He is just not big on tag teams. He doesn't know how to manage stables. I mean, anyone that says like, you can't keep a stable fresh for a while. Triple H kept the Undisputed Era fresh for about 4 or 5 years. The likes in New Japan, Suzuki-gun, Chaos, and that have been going on for like 5 to 10 years. You can easily have a stable stay fresh, changing members over time, changing stories, and I think Ross has made very good points there about the Hurt Business. I completely agree with everything that he said there. The stable wanted to stay together. They tore through some people. I mean, look, they tore through Apollo Crews so much that he changed nationality and gimmick when he came back. I don't know if they just battered him and he went home, watched Coming to America, and decided that's my new gimmick and that's the match that I'm wanting to hit at WrestleMania. But
do you guys? I know it's going to be the live stream's going to talk about WrestleMania, but do any of you guys have a clue what the hell the Nigerian drum fight's going to be? What the feck is that?
It actually sounds racist. I don't even know any other way to say it. I was like, this sounds racist. Like, this man is from California and they've given him a fake Nigerian accent. What is going on here?
Yeah, it's either going to be something stupid that is a bit crap, or it's going to be something that's like cultural appropriation that borderlines on offensive. Like, it's just
you have both seen the second Ace Ventura film, right?
Yes.
Is it going to involve like how Ace gets his head banged off the drum? Is it going to involve a banging your opponent's head off certain drums in like each corner or something like that?
Well, there is a thing that Vince apparently loves watching old things. That's where he gets his stuff from. I think he's only just finished watching Friends. That finished in 2004. So he's probably watched Ace Ventura 2 and thought, oh my God, this is you. This is fresh.
It's just going to come out shouting, Chicago.
He gave Gail Kim the Matrix gimmick 3 years after the Matrix came out. So, I mean, he's not exactly up to date on things.
No.
I think as soon as we see like general managers in their office answer the phone going, what's up? That kind of lets you know about the time period that Vince is watching on TV.
He's going to have in a year or so time, we're going to get the Joe Exotic Carol Baskin gimmick thing. He's just going to be like, oh, I saw this new show on Netflix.
When he does it, when they've done this Nigerian drum gimmick match, is it actually going to be allowed on the Peacock network? Because they're obviously censoring everything. Is it going to pass the standards?
Alan Laurie has an opinion on this particular match. He thinks it's going to be a Punjabi prison match with drums.
Oh, no, I'd be for that. Oh, no, the Punjabi prison is sensational. I love it. I will hear no blasphemy against it.
What was the match? The match that Moxley and Jericho had with the cage had the plant on it.
Mitch. We Mitch.
Asylum.
The Ambrose Asylum. Maybe something like that.
Mitch was a great character.
What character?
Mitch was a better promo than Tamina.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, jeez. Anyway, we're going to go slightly away from the WWE stuff because obviously our WrestleMania coverage is more than just this. As I always do. We've got all other. We've got, as I say, we've got the Takeover stream tonight, and we've got the 2 WrestleMania ones at the weekend, which will go into the cards in a lot more detail. But we're going to go through a few other stuff over the rest of the show. One thing I'd like to talk to you both, gents, about is something that's been a bit of a topic in the UK media over the last week, and it's the idea of COVID vaccine passports. That's something that the governments in both the UK and Scotland are they're considering very heavily in a way to kind of open up the economy as we move through the summer, as the vaccinations continue. And it's mainly been talked about around the idea of all these big mass gatherings of events. Football, for example, is things that people have been saying a lot of, but it also does do other forms of large events, which would include professional wrestling events. Obviously, this could be a way of getting live wrestling back in the UK much quicker than we potentially thought. Grant, you travel about the UK regularly before COVID ruined our lives to go to various shows. What's your thought of the idea of these passports to potentially get wrestling back?
I think, as the only one out of the three of us that has actually been vaccinated, get it runges. I do see merit in it. Understandably, it's the rights implications. It could be seen as discriminatory. The same way that like people about the whole lanyards and being exempt from wearing masks, and shops aren't allowed to actually challenge that sort of thing. It leaves a lot. To me, if anything that's going to move things further forward and get things back to normality, I think the passports could be something done within reason. I don't see it as totally unreasonable. At the end of the day, people go, that's an infringement. Well, I'm sorry, but you need a vaccine to go and visit some countries in the world. If you want to go to the likes of Thailand and that, you need certain vaccinations, and you have to have a vaccine passport for that. So I think it's just more the fact that people are, it would kind of bug them because, like, I'm saying it's for going to Thailand, but not everyone goes to Thailand. It's not like going down the shops. I'm off to Bangkok, see you later. But I think it's because this is something that would infringe on
your proclivities, Grant. Your summer of shame is for you and you alone, pal.
I am saying nothing that the authorities will allow me to say. But I think it's going to get people more because this is affecting something that potentially they are doing on the regular. Because like Steve said, I was I think before pandemic, like in the year, if you go back 2018, 2019, I think I was in London at least 5 times for different shows. I went to Chicago to All In. I've been to Manchester almost every other month for shows. I'd been to Progress, Rev Pro, you name it, I'd pretty much been there, and New Japan and London as well. So, and you look at how big those gatherings could be. Like the New Japan show in London, I think was like 6,000 or 7,000 folk. If a vaccine passport is going to give people that peace of mind and lets the events go ahead, then yes, I definitely believe it should be something that, but I think they do need to weigh up. How do you include people that perhaps can't be vaccinated? Because it would feel a bit unfair. It's like, well, you're pregnant or you've got another health condition, so no, sorry, game over for you.
Yeah, I've my personal opinion of it. I can kind of see it more for stuff like events or things that you would usually pay to get into anyway. So the likes of the football, wrestling, nightclubs, I can kind of get that one. But when you throw it back onto the shops and the pubs type idea with it, you don't pay to go to a pub, you don't pay to go into a restaurant, so you shouldn't have to kind of do that anyway. It's a free house for a reason they call these pubs, which is why I think you maybe should ignore it for that type of stuff and maybe favour it towards the large-scale events. But Ross, another side of it, I think there's a bit of a debate as well for a lot of wrestling promoters, especially ones who run the smaller type of companies that don't have the supports, maybe like the likes of Progress and ICW have, because they're running stuff on the network. They've got that money coming in. But a big dilemma for a lot of these promoters is obviously talent coming in, because they use a lot of overseas talent for a lot of shows. And also the idea of the fact they've got 2 guys or 2 women, let's not discriminate gender in this one, taking on each other in close contact. They might not have access to testing, they might not have access to any of that stuff, so they can't guarantee the safety of the wrestlers in the ring. So if they were to introduce a sort of passport idea, not just for the fans, that could actually help, in terms of that, and give the promoters a bit of more peace of mind too.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like small promotions, just like amateur football, like all the lowland leagues and all the non-leagues in England get cancelled because they couldn't guarantee testing. I'm sorry, but until we get to a stage where you can either afford testing or COVID passports come in, which is what is looking like what's going forward, you shouldn't be running shows. And obviously we talk about, people like to use other wrestlers from other places and what have you. I think it is just a case of with the world in shambles like it is now, it's going to have to be a case of, well, tough, what I mean? Like, it's a case of, if you've not been vaccinated, you don't get the passport, therefore you can't come work for this promotion. You know what I mean? Like, unless there is testing in place. You know what I mean? Like, it's just what we're seeing in Scotland just now. The Scottish Cup is being played as like sort of a mini tournament. There's going to be 5 rounds in the space of 10 weeks because it's a case of it's been delayed so long to get to the point where lower league clubs could guarantee testing for their players, and non-league clubs were given assurances that they were given the money to test their players. You know what I mean? Like, COVID is something that we've never had before, and we're never going to have the likes of again. Fingers crossed. You know what I mean? So,
hopefully not in our lifetime, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Wait till I'm dead, for God's sake, next week. But yeah, because like you see things like the European Championships, it's just been announced as we're on air. Scotland are going to have 12,500 fans, or there's going to be 12,500 fans allowed into each game at Hampden in the Euros. So stadiums will not be at capacity. I don't imagine that people will be allowed to travel for these games. I imagine it'll all be Scottish people, and in Wembley it'll be all English people, what have you. So, no, it's weird that, you know, it's annoying that certain indie shows aren't back yet. It's annoying that certain indie promotions are suffering, but it's also annoying for everyone that, you know, we're in a COVID era. So until testing or passports come in, it's a case of, well, tough, you know what I mean? Tough, you know what?
I mean, to give you a wee bit of context there, I've actually got my first indie show booked for this year at the end of July. I'm going to Manchester, and the venue that they're using, they're going to only be doing 50% capacity.
Aye.
As a way to balance it. But promotions down south, Wrestle Circus have announced dates, TNT have announced dates. Cross travel between like England and Scotland is apparently going to be possible by the time you hit June, July time. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we do get people travelling in come that point of the year.
Mm-hmm. I'm not counting my chickens, you know, until it happens, you know, because I've been bumped many times before by this stupid disease. You know, I came out last March and said, pubs will be opened in May, we'll be all right, we'll be good to go, and then look at us.
And for the record, live on air.
As one of the only people that got to go on holiday last year, all I can say is,
I mean, for the record, live on air, COVID has actually prevented me from giving Stephen Wilson a kick in the balls for at least 6 or 7 months minimum now.
I think it's been longer than that, man. I think it's much longer than that.
I think it's about a year now.
Yeah. I was shining it up real nice and sticking it straight up the candy S's. But no, it's an interesting point. I think you got to put wrestling into that. Wrestling will get the same mainstream, you know, attention as football because of the Euro type stuff as well. But I think the way things are going, there is a potential that by the autumn we could have these things back again. But you never bloody know. You know, we got told last year, the vaccine will do everything. The vaccine's a grey out, and the vaccine came in going, we need to wait for this, and that. It's like, stop moving the bloody goalposts. But this isn't a politics podcast. I'm not going to get into that.
I was about to say, Chris Whitty, can we get back to the wrestling?
Don't compare me to Chris Whitty. Have you seen that man? He wears a suit 3 sizes too big for him.
Ken, Stephen doesn't look like he's worn a suit in his life these days. It's been that long.
I get actually complimented by Chris Murray yesterday, because on the WrestleMania 17 show, I wore my WrestleMania 17 t-shirt. On the China show that we recorded yesterday, I wore this DX top. And they went, "You've stepped up the t-shirt game." I'm like, it's the only sort of routine. Unless it's going to work, I don't put on anything except shorts and sweatpants. You know what I mean? Like I'm living in filth, for Christ's sake.
I'm glad you said it's him that complimented you. I thought you were about to say, well, my mum says I'm a special boy.
Well, my mum told me I'm the most handsome boy in Asda. All right.
Then what did she tell your brother then? What did she tell your brother?
It doesn't work in Asda, so.
He's let's be honest, his brother's second fiddle in that house because they bought a dog. Let's be brutally honest.
Aye, we Dexter Loomis, the Doug.
We Dexter Loomis, the Doug.
So later on tonight, or yesterday if you're listening to it on the podcast network, the Takeover's going to go out. The pre-show for Takeover starts at midnight UK time. It's not the only thing that's happening at midnight UK time, because we are getting the report from the all-party parliamentary group on wrestling, who are obviously looking into.
About this.
I know I sounded I sounded really cheery about that, but yeah, they are releasing their report. They've been looking into the whole aftermath of the speaking out movement. They've had talks with wrestlers such as Cara Noir and I believe Rhea O'Reilly as well from the UK scene. This is a big potential report, big implications for the wrestling industry in the wake of the speaking out movement. Grant, this could be a major turnaround for how this industry goes about it in the UK.
I think there's a lot of people been following on Twitter. A lot of people are nervous about what is this going to mean for wrestling in the UK. What does this do to the Brit Rest scene on the fallout from speaking out? And I mean, some key things to take into mind is this group is just about investigating that. They've taken in information from all over fans, wrestlers, promotions. They've spoke to all sorts at all levels, but they cannot enforce anything. So people need to keep a realistic expectation of what's going to come out in the back of this. It is still going to have a huge bit put on that the promoters themselves be trustworthy, and that is where the trust was probably at its most shattered. Was now that promoters are starting to put things out again, you're already seeing people popping up going, well, this person was actually named and speaking out, so can we really trust you? That sort of thing. Obviously, it's happened with Progress already. Paul Robinson, they cut ties with him. He's put out his own statement, that sort of thing. So I'm very cautious in how this, if this will actually mean a real difference, or if it is going to be just like a token spoken piece. You know, there's a lot that could come out. I know that one of the things they changed in law down in England was the whole coaches, the thing that certain wrestlers that I'm not going to name just because of the whole liable thing, but with trainees and that, you know, it is now the law that if the trainee is under 18, that is breaking the law. That is you being a predator. Simple as that. It is in the law now. But still, too little too late, some might say.
Yeah, why it wasn't a law in wrestling when it's a law in pretty much any other form of sport, you know, is a strange one.
It's a law for teachers as well. It's a law in colleges and like in colleges it does in university where people are, you know, people go back to, you know, university as an adult. I went back at 26, but there's a law preventing teachers and students dating each other because there is a position of power there. You know, children do stay in school past the age of 16, sometimes depending on what level of education they want to get to. There's laws against that. You know, it is wrestling for far too long policed itself, and I use that term policed loosely. Like it was, you know, we spoke to people who are involved in wrestling or went on to train in wrestling. We won't name names in case they get into a bit of trouble, you know. But they said that, oh well, I can't do this. Well, why can't you do that? Oh well, my trainer doesn't like this. Whereas someone else at a different school was like, yeah, I can do this, and this if I want. It felt as if for far too long, large portions of certain teachers and certain schools policed how people conducted themselves and policed what people could do, and almost held people down. You know, a gimmick that, you know, maybe won't stand up now is the Kenny Williams gimmick of forever trainees. That he's not done anything wrong, by the way. I'm just pointing out the gimmick that he did on screen. Because a lot of things were done to make sure that people were actually kept down longer, and like it was all seen as paying your dues, when in actual fact it was, you know, it was free labor. It was slave labor. Yeah, it was people carrying heavy equipment and, you know, ring gear and transporting stuff without, you know, the appropriate licenses and what have you, and it was all just seen as, well, it's wrestling, it polices itself. Oh no, you don't involve people. You know, there's a hierarchy and you follow, you know, you earn your stripes and what have you. And I think what this thing coming out will do will prevent maybe more exploitation and put laws in place to maybe protect students when they go to these places. Because that's probably, as Grant said, that's probably about as much as they could do. They've put regulations on wrestling that they've put in the real world. You know, because wrestling is in that weird spot of it's not a legit non-scripted sport, but it's not a business of entertainment. You know, for years we've heard about scandals in Hollywood and what have you, and scandals in football. Scottish Premiership just released a statement regarding historical child abuse through all clubs in Scotland. Wrestling's sort of in the middle of that, and so for a while it's sort of just been ignored by authorities, and it's sort of been allowed to police itself. And I think this is going to, a lot of promotions have taken the right steps, we should say that. This isn't going to be a case of like, oh, well, my local promotion now has to do this, this, and this. A lot of promotions have taken steps to get rid of abusers, to make sure talent feels comfortable, to make sure talent feels safe working with certain people.
Aye.
But this law will make it a law rather than just the right thing to do.
I mean, I'd say you've got it in the money there. It is that whole thing that it kind of feels like, well, they don't belong under like theatre and performing arts, but they don't fall under sport. They're like the unwanted bairn in the middle. I didn't want that. I didn't want that. It's like, so it's been left today, fend for itself, and it's become a toxic environment at points. I mean, some promotions are doing really good and being very transparent. Catch Pro Wrestling, the one that I'm going down to in July, they've put out their full safeguarding procedure, which has been very well written. Everyone on the team's got to sign it, and that, like the guys that run it have shared their signed copies and stuff like that. So it does give you that reassurance that there are people that are taking it seriously. They are sort of, but it is still okay. It is going to be a slow trust exercise to get every fan back, because there are people who will maybe fall into it too easy. There are people that are on the opposite side, I'd say, too cynical. And I get why that is. They've been burned too many times. They've been on the wrong end of it. There needs to be a middle ground where people do need to get there's too many that are trying to stop things, but at the same time, they don't want to stop. So it's like, are you giving them a second chance, or are you saying they can't?
Yeah.
It has to be one or the other. There needs to be a middle ground found. It's too many extremes getting played about.
Totally. I think at least it's going to take things in a positive step and move it away from a point that we'll never see all the stuff that came out in the last year again. We'll never see people having to go through these type of events that they've went through, training to do something that they love. So they should never have to be put in that position. But it's a good thing that the higher authorities have at least taken some serious matter, as opposed to just going with what you usually kind of see as, it's just wrestling, let's go away. Wrestling has a sport or an entertainment aspect of it, so you need to kind of treat it properly in that aspect of it. But we will move away from that more serious topic, and we will go on to AEW, because we can't forget about AEW in the midst of WrestleMania week. They have stuff going on. They've got the last ever head-to-head with NXT tonight at time of recording, but they also had, obviously, last week's show, which was main evented by Arcade Anarchy. The match between Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor against Kip Sabian and Miro, formerly known as Rusev, and what can only be described as mental. I think is the best words. I've put in it. Either of you gents been able to watch the full match yet?
I have.
No, I haven't seen it.
Are you glad with this seen it? It was just you I was questioning. To be fair, more than anything else.
I did. Would you call it? I did. My experience of Dynamite is watching clips on YouTube when they're must see, and stumbling across it on STV, which I did the other night. I watched Christian's first match back. I loved the Inner Circle taking back their locker room. Loved Britt Baker rubbing Thunder Rosa's nose in it. The fact that the biggest win of her career doesn't count because it was an unsanctioned match. And then tiredness got the better of me, and it's WrestleMania week, and got to regulate myself here, Stephen. I've kept myself busy all day so I can go for a sleep after this. I've got another live stream to do, because as usual on this podcast, I'm the busiest man on WrestleMania week. So I've got to...
To be fair, you volunteered to do these. Nobody makes you do them. There's 17 other people who could do it. It's not like you're the only guy here.
There's about 5. There's about 5 that are willing to do it, and 3 of them are on this show.
So you fell asleep before the Anarchy match.
Long story short, I didn't watch it.
Grant, there was hijinks. There was, crazy spots. Penelope Ford gets whacked with a bit of window by a returning Chris Statlander. Trent comes back, and so does his mum. It's a feel-good story, whatever. It's a feel-good story, if anything.
If anything, what I picked up for this is when you come down to like these like really daft stipulation matches that can just be wild, like the parking lot brawl, Arcade Anarchy. Best Friends and Orange Cassidy are your go-to guys for it because they can bring the legit wrestling aspect, but they can also have a lot of fun with it. I honestly thought it was an absolutely fantastic match, and I know for a lot of people this feud before that was kind of like, oh god, is this feud still going? Is this ever going to end? I'm sick fed up of like this Miro and Kip Sabian partnership, but this match was absolutely outstanding. I loved it. And it was a highlight of Dynamite along with Christian's return match. Christian's return with Frankie Kazarian was beautiful. Could not fault it.
I'm really surprised that none of the two of you have said the highlight of Dynamite was the formation of QT Marshall's U stable. With Anthony Ogogo. What the
See, Anthony Ogogo's been signed with them for ages. He's just not being telling. And I'm open to giving it an opportunity because it's actually giving him a bit of personality. Like he has become a bit of an arsehole, and a lot of people weren't a big fan of him. Well, why not put that to good use? Make him an arsehole so people want to see him get battered.
I mean, I've got less of an issue with Anthony Ogogo, and I've got more of an issue with a push for QT Marshall. I've just not bought him.
How gutted is Anthony Ogogo? He was earmarked for the Inner Circle. He's now in QT Marshall's stable.
Yeah, it's him, Aaron Solo, obviously Bailey's former fiance,
former Mr. Bailey.
Yeah, I feel bad, but it's the only real thing I know about him. And the other guy who is a big guy, let's be brutally honest, he's really big. But there was a lot of good. Obviously, Christian's return match is good. It's great to see Christian get in there. Sting and Darby Allin, had a regular coffee break thing. Give them something else to do. These two. I mean, I would like to see them do something else. But Dynamite tonight, Grant. Big stuff going on in that particular one. We have got a match that probably screams dream match to you of Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers taking on Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks.
This match is screaming putting that match. You put that match on to go up against Takeover. Like, let's face it, that is the reason that match is there, is to give something that could match what's on Takeover. Because on paper, Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers against Moxley and the Bucks. This story is really evolved because half a year ago we were guessing, oh well, the Bucks are kind of finally turning heel just like Omega. It's going to be the three of them together, and then the Good Brothers come in and completely rewrite the story. I like looking at this whole card that's at least been announced. That match is my highlight, but I'm looking at everything else that's on it, and I still look forward to the rest of the card. It's actually a fairly solid card. It's just, I'll be honest, Takeover is still going to edge it for me tonight because Takeover's looking beautiful.
It's a banging Takeover card. I mean, everybody's saying that this could be the final night of the Wednesday Night Wars in America, and this will be probably the night that Triple H beats Tony Khan, NXT beats AEW. But it is a Takeover. I mean, it's an absolute banger of an actual thing there. Everything's going on that one. I mean, Ross, would you feel any other week you would watch Kenny and the Good Brothers versus Mox and Bucks, but tonight's probably not going to be that night?
No, tonight obviously is NXT TakeOver and it's WrestleMania week into the bargain. So, as big as, I know for Grant, New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom is like his pilgrimage every year. January 4th is like his WrestleMania week. But for the mass of the majority of the wrestling community, WrestleMania week is the week. And there's a reason that Ring of Honor and TNA and so many other promotions go to the area where WrestleMania is usually held in non-COVID times and host their big shows of the year. and host their biggest gates of the year and get, the most fan interaction of the year and, spend the most money to get the biggest, non-WWE talent they can in. You know what I mean? It's WrestleMania. So, yeah, for TakeOver to go up against AEW, I think you'll still have, the loyal people that watch AEW that will watch it. But TakeOver is TakeOver, and it's it's a WrestleMania weekend TakeOver. And it's also on a night where, and I made the point talking about WrestleMania not having great, just bell-to-bell matches for a while, and that New Japan was getting those accolades quite a bit. And a weekend where we're going to see Seth Rollins versus Cesaro and Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. We're also going to have Kushida versus Pete Dunne on this takeover. So, and of course, you're going to see Johnny Gargano go up against one of 6 potential guys. Johnny Gargano, Mr. Takeover. So this is going to be a weekend. Sorry, a week. I keep saying weekend. It's a week now. It's gotten that big.
It's a Wednesday night. It's mental.
I know.
I mean, you do look at it, and it's like a case of, I mean, like, for the indie smark in me will be like, hey, look at all those great Mania matches. No, like I've seen them before. No at Ring of Honor. No at PWG. But I don't want to take that away from. I don't want to take that away from WWE. I think these matches are going to be good in their own right. I think people can be guilty of, as we've seen with Styles and Nakamura, you put too much stock in what the old matches were. And you can't take away things like the old Nakamura Styles matches as an all-time classic. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. Very rarely can you catch lightning in a bottle. Yeah. But if you let them run with it, guaranteed Owens and Zayn, Cesaro and Rollins, they 2 matches have potential show stealer. Kushida Pete Dunne, I reckon it's probably one of the top 3 matches I'm looking forward to over this coming 5 days.
I mean, AEW have thrown something unusual at tonight, announcing Mike Tyson is returning to Dynamite tonight. That's something.
We're going up against WrestleMania, for Christ's sake. If something ever screamed WrestleMania week, yeah, I got it right that time.
Aye.
If something ever screamed WrestleMania week, it's Mike Tyson showing up at the competition.
Oh, it's something else. I mean, when you mentioned that WrestleMania card, this is an interesting point. I'm just going to bring up the now. A lot of people are comparing this WrestleMania to WrestleMania 31. WrestleMania 31 had a horrendous build-up in many people's minds. But I feel that in the last 6 years, obviously, it's been the best all-round WrestleMania. Match for match, I think it was hard to find a bad match on that card. Not many great. There was matches that weren't great. But there wasn't really bad ones in there, which I think is going to make it interesting. I think that's what this WrestleMania's got in prospect as well. Other than Braun Strowman, Shane McMahon, not looking forward to that one. I'm not a fan of cage matches. I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't like cage matches.
Why are you not looking forward to Braun the Tank Engine?
Oh no, I love Braun's I love it so much. I think
that wasn't a tank engine. You just sounded like Tugger in South Park. Is Russell Crowe going to start fighting someone beside you there? Oh my God, it's Russell Crowe.
I mean, I'm more looking forward to seeing what Omos is going to do. I bet he hits a moonsault. Could you imagine that big man hitting a moonsault?
Oh my God.
I want to see Omos just pick up Xavier Woods and slam him as hard as he can.
Well, while we're talking Omos and that, just a little side note. See that cameo thing? Have you guys all seen that? You can pay for a message for folk.
Yeah.
WWE has actually teamed up with them for WrestleMania weekend. You can get one for Omos. It's 112 quid. How many words are you going to get out of him for that? Because how many words has he spoke on telly?
He's not spoken a word.
I've had a look at that cameo, and oh my God, some of the prices people pay. You do get some of them, and it's like, I'm charging £400, but all my money is going to, the American Juvenile Fund for Diabetes. You're like, oh, that's nice. She's raising money for charity. Then you get people like David Hasselhoff. I'm charging $400, and it's going straight to my back pocket.
The WWE ones, the cheapest was 112, and some of them, I think Shane McMahon was one of the top for expense. Well, he drew in that, and they were 300 and 375 each. And I was like, what if you put this into per word, you'll probably get a minute video. What is it going to? They're essentially charging a 10 hour a word or something like that.
I mean, if you
my
seen
favorite
that,
thing on... Sorry,
no, you go.
My favourite thing on Cameo was unfortunately finding out after we did the Viscera show, that Mo from Men on a Mission, you can get a cameo from him for $20. I think we could have had a whip round the podcast and got Mo to do the introduction for the Christmas special.
I mean, I
To be
always
honest,
wondered
if
about
me and
things
Gary
people
win
pay
this
for.
weekend, I'll pay the $20 myself to get Mo to announce me and Gary as champions.
I mean, you mentioned those prices of cameos. I thought there was something strange, but then I watched that round of Quiz Showdown that Daniel did with the strange things, the strange prices for stuff, and it's like, yeah, there's some people who buy some weird stuff. But no, Dynamite tonight is on for anybody, or Dynamite was on last night if you're not watching us live. And
who could
obviously
believe Mike Tyson hit a 450 splash?
I know. And almost hit a shooting star press. You know, Alan Laurie, you know, he's great interaction here. Says that Omos is going to do to Woods what Drew did to the Money in the Bank briefcase that one time on Raw, i.e. launch it up the ramp. That's a WrestleMania ramp as well. It's not going to be small. On you go. The list of potential Christmas specials on this podcast is growing. We now can add Omos to the list along with Jack Swagger for anybody listening to this week's feature show. To round off the show, obviously, there's more to WrestleMania week or weekend, depending on what you say, than just WWE. I'm going to hand it over to our resident independent wrestling expert, Grant, who's going to outline some of the other stuff that's going on at WrestleMania weekend outside of WWE.
Right. So I've listed a bunch of matches, probably about 10, 12 in total, that are particular what I'd say highlight matches. Some of these guys you'll have heard of, some of them you won't have, possibly, you know, me being the indie mark that I'll gauge your reactions to some of them. So first one, the big one for me, Nick Gage vs Ricky Shane Page is happening at Spring Break for GCW. That is going to be a violent affair with the feud that they've had going on for like pretty much the last year in GCW. So that's one. The next one, have any of you watched any of the Josh Barnett Bloodsport events or when Matt Riddle done them?
Seen some of them, aye.
It's John Moxley vs Josh Barnett is the main event. That to me that's going to be beautiful. Someone who I've got a few of his matches mentioned, Leo Rush vs Yoya, who I'm not too familiar with, and also Chavo Guerrero vs Rocky Romero are also happening at Bloodsport. Like
I've seen the Chavo one advertised. I've seen that one. That interested me quite a bit.
Like GCW is running a ton of shows and they are very, very diverse. There's a soul and a pole match. What that involves, I do not know. Ross's face is just saying that there. I said soul and a pole. That is between that is between Effie and Ace Perry at Effie's Big Gay Brunch. Big Gay Brunch is actually a really entertaining show. I've watched one of them before. We have Leo Rush vs Lee Moriarty in a first time ever match at For the Culture, again GCW. Too Cold Scorpio vs Rich Swann. We've got Davey Boy Smith Jr., who was looking pretty banging at the Hall of Fame ceremony with a bulldog and that, and some questionable fashion choices, but respect. He's against KTB at Bloodsport. And the last one that I kind of noted was Jordan Oliver vs Leo Rush is happening at Spring Break.
Did you say Too Cool Scorpio versus Rich Swann?
Yes, I did.
What the hell? What's next? Is Savio Vega going to show up at one of these shows?
Oh, I hope so.
Oh.
I always feel robbed because Savio Vega kind of stopped becoming a thing as I started watching wrestling. And he seems something alone.
Just add Mark Jindrak to that, man, with the best drop kick. But like, if you look at like Leo Rush, is definitely he's putting in the work over that weekend. I think I saw the GCW shows that they were doing. They were doing actually like a group ticket where you could get a ticket for every single one of the GCW shows, and I think a front row seat for every show together was like a combined price of like $450. I've got like a spreadsheet and it's got the entire list of like pretty much every show on over Mania weekend, and it's a lot smaller than what it was like 2 years ago when I tried staying up for the best part of 6 days to follow it. I think I watched like 34 shows in the space of 6 days.
Yeah,
I was like
smaller for obvious reasons.
I was like Homer in The Simpsons. Have you been up all night eating cheese? I think I'm
blind.
The match earlier in the week that I mentioned the other day, incredibly to see, was Leo Rush versus Enzo Amore.
Mhm.
That would have been interesting,
Like
Enzo's
Enzo,
apparently still got a lot of like backstage at WWE.
he's got a lot of like in a lot of places. Like he's been on obviously Gallows and Anderson have the worst pay-per-view of all time, Talking Shop Mania 1 and 2, and Enzo appeared in that, and it was actually really hilarious. His appearance, he just literally came in and was like, "I got paid to do this. This is pish. I'm off."
He's
Class.
on camera review as well.
Oh, he'd charge a fortune.
Aye.
The certified G and the bona fide stud, you can't teach that, man. You can't pay for it either because it's going to cost a fortune.
Think how different it could have been to if if Leo Rush was still in WWE. Could you imagine how different the Hurt Business would be when you've got MVP being serious? Lashley.
I loved Leo Rush with Lashley. I thought it was
brilliant.
For a while, it was the best Lashley gimmick because it was the only time he showed personality.
Yeah, and then they get rid of. They put Leo Rush to NXT and put Lashley with Lana.
Less said about that the better. I covered that for Raw Report. It's horrendous.
Oh, yeah,
One of those things you wish you
Lashley's
could
getting some
slip
love.
for the mind.
At least Lashley gets off. But there's a great variety of matches that Grant's mentioned there. Some technical matches, some Vince Russo inspired matches in there as
I should
well.
really say where you can get them all. You can get them all on Fight TV because I'm probably going to pick up a few of them for a bit of banter since they're only about £10 each.
So you're talking about regulating your... Sorry, on you go, Tim.
No, you go.
I'm just thinking you're talking about regulating your sleeping pattern. As soon as this show ends, I'm going to sleep till the NXT Takeover preview show, and then I'm not getting up till then. You've got to start strong. You've got to get yourself into a routine for WrestleMania week.
Oh no, I just didn't sleep. I just didn't sleep for it. It's like you're the man that might do the most podcasts in here, Ross, but I'm probably the man in here on this podcast that watches the most actual wrestling.
Yeah, this is the point you need to start because you've got the two takeovers. If you want to watch the SmackDown, because SmackDown actually looks really good to watch this week because it's got those two matches. You've got that,
NXT
and then you've got the main.
Prelude.
Oh yeah, I've not even talked about that. Somebody's going to face
Walter against Rampage Jackson. What was that? The women's tag match for NXT UK actually looks a banger this week. Kaylee Ray and Isla Dawn against Millie McKenzie and Satomura. That is banger written on it.
See, I would love it if Ciampa beats Walter and Ciampa just shows up at the BT studios, just swaggering in. They've like, we've advertised 2 Walter matches to take place one night after each other. What's going to happen in Walter's first match?
The fact that I've not seen Ciampa in so long, then I suddenly saw that he had hair, and I was like, "Is this what Hockney looks like without a hat on?"
Got my hat here. Knock my headphones off live on air. On that note, I think we should round off this particular special edition of ESSR Central. For anybody who's watched us live in this edition on Facebook and YouTube.
What is that hat about?
This is a gimmick.
I stuck an old hat on while I was out putting a second coat of paint on the fence, and it's still sitting here. It is absolutely guff. That's why I used it for painting. That's why again, if you've watched us live on Facebook or YouTube, thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to everybody who's commented along. If you are listening to us on a regular slot on the podcast network on a Thursday, obviously, hope you've enjoyed it too. And if you've not subscribed to us on that, please subscribe to us now. We are on all the good podcasting platforms. The one you're listening to us on, all other ones, just find us Eat, Sleep, Suplex, Retweet on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Suplex, Retweet. Of course, we're also on YouTube. Loads of great content on there. We've released a few great shows over the last week or so. Quiz Showdown 9 was on there. Ross was on that. Find out if he won it. It's been over a week now, so we can find out if he has won it. There's the cricket tournament final. I've picked the winner of that particular. I heard that the winner of that final has not yet received his trophy. So, Gamble, being Hockney, whoever won that match wants the trophy.
The Booker T. Roffey.
The Booker T. Roffey. Yes, absolutely. Me or Hockney, not going to spoil it, want a trophy. So loads of great content on the YouTube stuff. Loads of great stuff on the podcast network as well. Of course, there is a Central show and the feature shows as well. This week we released a show on the Raw after Mania. Myself and Ross were on that. It was a very fun show to be on. Next week, we'll be talking about the career of China. Interesting. And the week after
one as well.
Yep. And the week after that, me and Grant are on that one. We're going to be talking about Dark Side of the Ring. That's going to be an interesting show on the platform. Loads of great content coming up. Hit subscribe to get it all. But from us on Central, I'd like to thank Ross and Grant for joining me. Gents, thanks for being here on this special live edition of Central.
No, it's not at all. I had fun.
It's been a pleasure, lad. And I think we've managed to keep the swearing to a minimum. Please do not say fuck a bugger.
Yep, we did have some interesting comments on the streams that I will not read out, but hey ho, that is for another day. Thank
you to you, the Gordon Duncan of wrestling podcasts.
I don't have the hair of Gordon Duncan. That man's got a great
no.
He's Motherwell's finest.
I'm not going to call you that actually, because does that make me Hugh Keevins?
Yes.
Yes. You can be Mark Wilson if you want.
Oh God, no.
I've been Stephen Wilson. We'll see you next time.